The Galactic Rehabilitation Center's auction hall buzzed with nervous energy as species from across 3 spiral arms gathered for the quarterly Displaced Persons Exchange. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective adjusted his ceremonial robes, watching the holographic displays cycle through profiles of beings seeking new homes after various conflicts had torn them from their original worlds. Most cases were straightforward: war refugees, economic migrants, political dissidents. The assembled delegates bid with practiced efficiency, matching beings to worlds where their skills would prove valuable. It was all very civilized, very orderly. Then Subject 847X appeared on the central display, and the hall fell silent. She stood barely 4 feet tall, her lavender skin marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in chaotic rhythms. 6 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and her large amber eyes held something that made even the most battle-hardened delegates shift uncomfortably. The Vrex translation matrix struggled to parse her species designation. Subject designation: Kira Thane, survivor from the Omega Nebula incident. The auction coordinator's voice wavered. Age approximately equivalent to a human adolescent. No known living relatives. Classification: Extreme rehabilitation case. The display showed footage of her episodes. Security footage of her tearing through reinforced containment cells, her claws leaving gouges in titanium walls. Medical reports scrolled past detailing her complete rejection of every therapeutic intervention attempted across 17 different species methodologies. She's been through 43 foster placements, the coordinator continued. Average duration 6 standard days. Current psychological evaluation suggests severe trauma-induced aggression, possible permanent antisocial adaptation, and, he paused, consulting his notes, an estimated 97.3% probability of requiring permanent institutional containment. Kethvar leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied the girl's file. The Zephyrians prided themselves on their rehabilitation programs, but even he had to admit, this case looked hopeless. Beside him, the Centaurian delegate's tentacles curled in distaste, while the crystalline Vorthan representative's light patterns shifted to deep, warning purples. Current bids starting at minimal care provisions, the coordinator announced. Any delegates willing to... Silence stretched across the hall. Not even the institutional caretakers raised their voting crystals. The girl on the screen suddenly looked directly at the camera, and every delegate felt that piercing gaze. Her bioluminescent patches flared bright red, and she bared her teeth, rows of needle-sharp points designed for tearing flesh. The footage cut to black. Perhaps we should move to the next, the coordinator began. I'll take her. Every head turned toward the human delegation. Captain Marcus Chen sat perfectly still, his hand raised in the traditional bidding gesture. His expression was calm, almost casual, as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. Captain Chen, his aide whispered urgently, the psychological reports. I read them, Chen replied without lowering his hand. Kethavar's translator crackled as he spoke. Human with respect, your species' tendency toward optimism may be clouding your judgment. This being has proven untreatable by our most advanced specialists. Chen turned to face the Zephyrian ambassador, his smile slight, but genuine. Funny thing about humans, we don't really believe in untreatable. She's destroyed property, injured caregivers, and shown zero progress towards social integration. The Centaurian delegate's translator rendered his concern in flat tones. What makes you think? Because, Chen interrupted, I recognize what I'm looking at. He gestured toward the dark screen where the girl's image had been. That's not a monster. That's a kid who's scared, angry, and probably convinced that everyone who claims they want to help is lying. The coordinator looked uncertain. Captain, I'm required to inform you that accepting this placement will void any support funding. Your government would bear full responsibility for containment if she proves unsuitable. Understood. Chen's hand remained steady. 3 months later, Kethavar's diplomatic cruiser docked at New Geneva Station. He'd been curious enough about the human's decision to schedule a follow-up visit, expecting to find either a tragedy or the girl transferred to some maximum security facility. Instead, he found Captain Chen in the station's agricultural bay, patiently teaching a small lavender figure how to prune hydroponic tomatoes. The transformation was remarkable. Kira, Chen had given her a simple name she could pronounce, moved with careful precision rather than violent unpredictability. Her bioluminescent patches glowed soft blue-green, and while she still watched Kethvar with obvious wariness, she didn't bare her teeth or assume an attack posture. "How?" was all the ambassador could manage. Chen glanced up from the plants, a tomato-stained hand resting gently on Kira's shoulder. She didn't flinch from the touch. Patience, mostly. "And pizza!" He grinned at Kira's confused expression. She'd never had food that wasn't nutrient-paced. Turns out she really likes pepperoni. But the psychological evaluation was probably right about the trauma. Chen's expression grew serious. She'd watched her entire people die in the nebula collapse, then spent 2 years being shuffled between species who treated her like a problem to be solved, rather than a person who was hurting. He looked down at Kira, who was carefully examining a particularly large tomato. She didn't need fixing. She needed someone to stick around long enough to prove they weren't going anywhere. Kira looked up at the sound of her name, then carefully handed Kethvar the tomato. Her amber eyes held wariness still, but also something the ambassador hadn't seen in her file photos. Hope. The scars on the walls of her room, Kethvar noticed. "You kept her in the same damaged quarters?" Chen nodded toward Kira, who was now showing off by hanging upside down from the trellis supports. "Those aren't scars. They're growth marks. We measure how tall she's getting by the new scratches she adds each month." He paused. "Besides, they're her scratches, her room. Her choice whether to cover them or keep them." As they walked back through the station corridors, Kira chattering excitedly about the tomato harvest in a mixture of her native language and broken standard, Kethvar marveled at the human approach. No sophisticated psychological protocols, no advanced therapeutic interventions, just one stubborn human who had raised his hand and refused to put it down, no matter how long it took. "Captain," Kethvar said quietly, "the Galactic Council is developing new rehabilitation protocols based on your methods. We're calling it the Chen Doctrine." Marcus Chen watched Kira race ahead to show their other human friends her perfect tomato, and smiled. "Just call it giving a damn," he said. "Works every time,